What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Echoes, a Notre Dame podcast. Mike Golic Jr., Jessica Smetana with you guys as we are Tuesdays every week, wherever you get us at the Echoes ND Pod on Twitter. Check out our YouTube channel of the same name. And, of course, download, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Plenty of great stuff to get to today. The Irish women's basketball team feels back on track. We have got an interesting conversation about the future of playoff expansion and how Notre Dame fans maybe should or shouldn't feel about the prospect of Indiana winning a national championship in the modern era here. But Jess, before we get to any of that, sports media, most of the job is really just us waiting around for those limited moments where we can feel right. And it feels like after our podcast last week, we can walk in here today and feel pretty good about the RELAX message when it came to Notre Dame's approach to the transfer portal, because after wandering through the desert for 40 days and 40 nights, looking around, wondering where any of our transfer players might come from, we got some answers here today, and it feels pretty good.
I love doing this through the lens of us being right and not through the lens of the football team possibly getting better in this portal cycle. But you're right, Mike, because last week it did feel like some people were spinning out a little bit about Nick Marsh signing with Indiana specifically and like some other players announcing they were going elsewhere. And then at midweek, Pete Sampson put out a post that was like, Notre Dame has 0 portal commitments. Georgia has 0. Ohio State has 1. Like basically all the teams that recruit at a high level had also not been off to a super high start in terms of commitment. So hopefully that maybe put people a little bit at ease. But as of the morning that we're recording this Monday morning, we've got a few names now to add to the mix. And I do also want to add, had this not been announced today, Mike, we were going to do a whole bit where we were like, Notre Dame finally got a player in the portal. It's Armel Mukam. He's coming back. But we don't have to do that bit now, even though I think that is probably a good thing for Notre Dame. So we'll get to all of that. We'll probably spend a lot of time talking about the defensive line in this episode. But other than Vindicated, how are you feeling about these fresh portal signings, including a cornerback, CJ McKinney from Colorado, Quincy Porter, wide receiver from Ohio State, Keon Keeley, a familiar name for Notre Dame fans, defensive lineman from Alabama, and maybe a few others here as we're recording. So we'll update that if things come along. But feeling good. Got a wide receiver, got a D lineman. Those were two of the things we talked about last week as being like positions where we would expect Notre Dame to add a little bit of depth.
Yeah, I think, yes, feeling very good. Like these are the positions of need that we all knew going into this cycle. They are players that came with former high school pedigree. And I think interesting this time around, Jess, at least a few of these guys are players with additional eligibility, which is not often something that Notre Dame has majored in the transfer market. It has usually been guys that come in, veterans who have played a bunch of football, like Devonta Smith last year, certainly like Malachi Fields at wide receiver, like Jordan Clark in years before. Like Notre Dame had kind of had a type, veterans that were kind of making the jump up and going to come and fill a role leadership-wise in specific positions. And now with some of these guys, now how much you buy into this mattering in the portal era where everything's a series of one-year contracts, that can certainly be a point of contention. But Notre Dame going after some young, talented players from other blue chip programs feels like something Notre Dame fans can and should be excited about.
Also, I meant DJ McKinney, but I'm so CJ Carr-pilled that I think I said CJ McKinney. But yes, Mike, to your point, what are your thoughts on signing players with a lot of eligibility left in the landscape of college football now, where it could still be a one and done thing? Or do you make anything of that? I mean, with a player like Keeley, it seems like kind of a different story because he was committed to Notre Dame as a recruit before he was, flipped back to Alabama. He's got, I think, 3 years left. But with the other players, like, does that matter to you? Do you think they're going to play or do you think they're going to stick around for all those years? Or what is the strategy here? Because Notre Dame in the past has mostly been like a grad transfer destination.
Well, and I think maybe that's something to keep an eye out on big picture in terms of, Notre Dame's ability to get players enrolled like that as classes get going today. You pointed it out. That was one of the funniest notes about Keon Keeley is that he was in class. I think was it Mike Singer?
Yeah.
Who reported
Keeley
that?
is at Notre Dame this morning for class because January 12th, as we're recording this Monday, is the first day of the spring semester at Notre Dame. So I would love to know what class he's in. Hopefully we'll find out someday what his first Notre Dame class was because that's a great little bit of detail on this whole thing.
But you've said the fact that these guys are able to get enrolled there, the fact that this does defy a norm makes you wonder about the long-term strategy going forward and how that may or may not change, because I do think for a lot of people going through this cycle in particular, where we are in technically year 2 of rev share, but year 1 of it being part of this defined portal period the way it was, year 1 of the portal being at a different time of year, all these different things that led to Notre Dame's approach and the approach of different college football teams at large being compared, contrasted, and talked about a lot more, to where we had talked about, discussed last pod in the past. Notre Dame's been able to do this work in the dark and kind of still present it the way they did here. Like when you look at the ultimate outcome for Notre Dame, it was they kind of were, quiet about this, very notably and well documented that Notre Dame did not host visits the first weekend that the portal opened. And that's why some people thought, hey, maybe this was a little bit slower to go. But this once again mimics what Notre Dame had done in years past, to where a lot of this work gets done and then it is all announced in one fell swoop. And they have traditionally, and this year did once again, land a bunch of players at positions of need that were high-level recruits or guys well thought of.
As we're recording, another commitment just announced, Jaden Sanders, the cornerback from Michigan. Mike, to backtrack for a second to Notre Dame not hosting anyone the first weekend of the portal being opened, I think we can safely say that was still a mistake. And
sure.
Although they seem to have reversed course here pretty easily, or not easily, but pretty seamlessly. Maybe, you learn some lessons for next year, because this is, after all, the first time the portal has been done this way. And seemed like if you were a player that had some pretty good offers in front of you, the first place you visited was probably the place you were going to end up, because you saw what the check was going to be or whatever.
Yes.
And that's totally fine. That's kind of how this works now for a lot of those big time players. But even though, it would have been great to have a Nick Marsh player on this team. It seems like they were still working on things in the background. So even though we were not aware what the ultimate signings were going to look like, it wasn't like they were totally flat-footed. Maybe they were just a little flat-footed about the timing of hosting a couple of those bigger players towards the front part of the portal. But then as the week went on last week, Mike, more and more players continued to enter the portal later, which is also interesting. This is, it'll be interesting to see what's replicable next year when this whole thing happens again. And we'll probably get to this later, but also a few pretty shocking non-Notre Dame related portal happenings last week. So at least that was the one bright side last week. I'm Notre Dame hasn't signed anyone yet. It seems like they're making good progress with a few players in positions of need, but at least the starting quarterback hasn't decided to leave after signing his new contract, because that happened at Washington. Ultimately, Damon Williams went back to Washington after legal action was threatened. But yeah, it does seem like this year in particular was a little bit of a wonky one for a lot of coaches, kind of unsure how to navigate the new single portal window opening after the new year.
Well, and I think that to an extent is to be expected. Like we've always said, the best programs are the ones that have leaned in and gotten ahead of a lot of this stuff. Notre Dame had a strategy that worked for them the first few years of the portal season, and maybe there is some upgrading there. I'm blanking on the name right now. Notre Dame also bolstered this side of its operation, making a hire from Penn State as well to
Assistant
go along with GM Mike Martin. So adding to that in the midst of this process, I don't know if there's a correlation causation thing as much as an availability of, hey, there's a regime change at Penn State. Someone might be available that you can now bring over as you continue to go and fine tune this process year after year.
Kenny Sanders was the assistant hire that they bolstered the GM room with, Mike. But yeah, do you want to talk about a couple of these players? We kind of mentioned Keeley already. He's 6'5", 282. Is that what you're looking for in terms of mass on the defensive line? He was not super productive at Alabama. He had 3 sacks and 9 pressures in 2025, only played 167 snaps. But he's someone that was, 5-star coming out of high school. So that's a player who the coaching staff sees traits. They see his size, they see his height, and they're like, we think we could work with that. And obviously hiring Charlie Partridge, made that mistake 2 shows in a row now, means they have someone in that D-line position coaching room that they think can like develop a player like him and possibly get more out of him next season.
Yeah, and I think that's something to keep in mind is how this all works in conjunction. Like, I do think having guys that right now, like overall, you'd say like outside of a few, like you mentioned some of these guys here, like CJ McKinney's played a ton of ball, but Quincy Porter a little on the more raw side. Keon Keeley sort of same boat there. Like Jaden Sanders played 300 snaps and started 2 games this last year, but still maybe less body of work than some of the guys that Notre Dame is used to. And so being that at positions where you trust coaching, like what Mike Mickens has done in the secondary, what you expect based on all the reports, like that's the other thing from this last week. Charlie Partridge seems to come incredibly well regarded from everyone who's worked with him, guys that have played for him, people talking about the job that he's done developing guys at that position. And it's no slight to Al Washington, who's done a great job and I'm sure will continue to with the linebackers now. But adding another coach like that on the staff to go along with these guys that do have high-end talent. And for Notre Dame, the one thing you could say about them, and it'll be curious to use this as a case study, but people that have come and largely been in the mix and received a bunch of playing time, been in the rotation, the attrition for Notre Dame has not been heavy in those ways. And I don't, know the trend for college football overall in a lot of those. Obviously, you'll get guys that are trying to make the jump up, get a bigger bag somewhere. But in general, the way Notre Dame has gone about its high school recruiting and its portal recruiting has lent it to being a staff and a program that's able to go about the process of retention a lot better, maybe because of the things that they focus on in that process. So, you give them credit for that. Their approach has netted them a roster that stayed largely intact outside of losing some reserve pieces in the way that everyone's going to now.
Yeah, KK Smith entered the portal, I think, late last week. Haven't mentioned that yet. Another receiver who's got a little fair amount of playing time last year. But yeah, to your point about retention, I think the one way to look at it, which a number of Notre Dame fans have pointed out to me, is like, how stoked would you feel to get a player like Boubacar Traore in the portal, or a Don Schuler in the portal, or Tay Johnson in the portal? Like, Notre Dame already has those players on their roster. They're not going anywhere. So that's one way to look at it too. I think, there's a lot of things that could make Notre Dame fans feel like a lot worse about how all of this has gone. And it would be players like that, players that started on your team leaving. But all the starters that were expected to be back, I believe, coming back. So that's great. And then you add a few more depth players. Still waiting to hear on the status of Jason Anye, which is another big piece of this defensive line, Mike. So going back from 2025, so many D linemen either out of eligibility or, in the case of Donovan Heinisch, medical retirement. He had the 3rd most snaps on the D-line. Jared Dawson had the 2nd most snaps on the D-line. Elijah Hughes is coming back. He had the 4th most snaps on the D-line, 264 snaps. Gabe Rubio had the 5th most, 173. Obviously, he got hurt. He is also off to the NFL. And then Armel Mukam, who was in the portal last week, decided to come back to Notre Dame. Only had 69 snaps. He's like a sophomore plus player, which means he is technically a junior, but he's listed as a sophomore, which I've also noticed Notre Dame has changed on their athletics website. They used to put like redshirt freshman or redshirt sophomore. We don't call it that anymore, I guess. Like, now you're a freshman, even if you're a sophomore, but you didn't play as a freshman. So that's adds a layer of confusion if you're just like quickly scanning all of it.
As someone who calls college football games for part of my living, it's a nightmare trying to figure it out.
Like, and there's a difference too. If you're a freshman but you've been on campus for a year or year and a half, 2 years, like, huge difference between that and being a true freshman. But yeah, Mukam had 69 snaps, played in all 12 games and had 5 tackles and 1.5 tackles for loss and a forced fumble against Pitt. So between him and Hughes, it's like, okay, a little scary hours, I think, on the D line. Like, those are two, Mukam especially is like kind of a younger player, like entering more of his upperclassman era now. And then you've got like the young players who did play a little bit this year. Your Cole Mullins, Sean Seviano, Davion Dixon, who are all freshmen or sophomore freshmen that maybe will step up. But like, you don't probably want to rely on that if you're Notre Dame on a roster that they want to make a championship run. So it makes a lot of sense to add some mass and experience, and especially players that have potentially huge upsides in that room with the amount of just either through like bad luck or running out of eligibility that they've had at D-line.
I mean, Notre Dame saw this in their playoff run last year. We're watching it happen with the playoff runs this year of Indiana and Miami who've made it there. Like, there's no substitute for size and depth along the lines of scrimmage in a sport where now you've got to win multiple games in the postseason to win the national championship. Like, Notre Dame saw the value of that last year when every other week it felt like someone new was injured there, but you had guys stepping up and ready to go. And so you certainly, like, I don't want to diminish the need for quality depth, but like to an extent, you also just need bodies there. Like, that's the other thing is Notre Dame defensively can do a lot of things. And we saw late in the season, once they found themselves again in the identity that was similar to 2024, you can get after people, you can bring the extra stuff, but at some point you do need guys that can buckle down and win one-on-one battles in the trenches. And so having a steady supply of those guys, and we'll see too, like, new D-line coach, like, coming over also means he's going to value different things or emphasize different things within the body of how Notre Dame already does stuff. But that leaves room for, hey, different guys take different coaching from different people different ways. Like, as someone who had 4 offensive line coaches in 5 years, like, sometimes you find the guy that unlocks you personally in a way that other people weren't able to, who teaches techniques that are more accessible to you or just fits your style overall. Like, there's a million ways that could go. And so I also don't discount that with a new position coach at that area, you also get a new opportunity for guys to walk in with a clean slate with that coach in particular and maybe still find their best football in front of them.
Yeah, and we're still hopeful Jason Anya gets his waiver for his 6th year, Mike.
Would be massive, like, physically massive in terms of size, but also just like production massive. Jason, we all know the background and the story and how 2024 went for him. What he became in 2025 was a really impactful player for Notre Dame on the interior in a way they desperately need.
Yeah, and led the interior D-line with the most snaps this year, according to PFF. So anyways, it's been a little bit of an adventure the last 10 days. And, maybe things were off to a rocky start, but Mike, there's 4 quarters in this transfer portal game. We're starting the 4th. I was going to say we're like near the end of the 3rd right now. I think the last day to enroll classes at Notre Dame is the 20th. So I assume that would be the last, we would probably have by next week's show when we're recording. I think we'd probably know what the total amount of new players is. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on this adventure ride that we've been on?
Well, I think it winds up being the same message that it's been the last couple of years, which is this is always a long game. There is always patience necessary, even in a process in a day and age where it doesn't feel like patience in any facet of this has been has been really a part of things. So I'd say, yeah, I'd say from that standpoint, Notre Dame and this administration have once again delivered on finding guys that they believe can come in and help the team at the positions of need that we all identified. They didn't do it completely out of the scrap heap. Like, again, are star ratings everything once you get to campus? No, but they've become better and better and more accurate predictors of what's to come and forecasting guys that can be NFL talent, especially when you combine that with the right coaching. So you're getting other guys from blue chip schools, some guys like we mentioned that Notre Dame's recruited, and now the different data point entered of guys with multiple years of eligibility to see how Notre Dame can maybe go about that retention in this different way to go along with what they've done in high school recruiting that, oh, by the way, netted a class that's also on campus as well, getting early enrolled now. So
exciting.
So it's another offseason where I think overall, like, you can exhale a little bit now, but now that we've got multiple years of this together, hopefully it will feel less scary when next year at the beginning of the portal cycle, a bunch of backup players that have maybe comparatively easier decisions to make financially in terms of playing time prospects hopping into the portal won't cause necessarily the same hair falling out that it did this year.
Well, it didn't for us. So let's once again pat ourselves on the back. There will be some point, hopefully not soon, where we're like, hey guys, everything's fine. And in the meantime, it's not, and we'll be super wrong. But I like our chill approach to things so far, Mike. Like we said last week, I feel like, Marcus Freeman and the staff have kind of earned a little bit of the benefit of the doubt when it comes to these things. So even when they maybe are a little off guard, they reverse course and like Notre Dame, I think, still going to end up with a pretty solid group here and a really good team in 2026, which it already is. I already forgot.
I guess I mean, CJ Carr, like, again, you got to zoom out the lens every once in a while. I opened up one of the sports books the other day, and CJ is the co-favorite with Arch Manning to win the Heisman in 2026. Like, you have got a quarterback that is highly regarded in the sport. You've got a team that made a run through the playoff into the national title and was looked at by everyone as a team capable of doing that, regardless of the decision committee made in terms of power rankings and all that. Like, you had all those things to sell. You've got the bedrock of recruiting that's also been piled on with a top 5 class. Like, there is so much to be excited about that losing out on one or two guys, just to your point, whose names you maybe just learned in the last week, is not a reason to start sounding the alarms and questioning if any of this is right for Notre Dame going forward.
All right, so on that note, we're going to take a break. We're going to talk about something that I'm boycotting. You'll find out what that is next. College football not feeling as juicy as it once did? Let me put you onto something that'll shake up your Saturday and every other day of the week.
Because now that Wendy's has crispy chicken tendies and a powerhouse lineup of new sauces, it's time you transfer to the hottest team in the league.
That's right, Team Tendies. Wendy's Tendies. They're making their undeniable rookie season one for the books. Enjoy first-string flavor from some 5-star recruits. Rep your new favorite team everywhere you go, but make sure to cheer with your mouth closed.
Take it to the end zone of savory sauces like honey barbecue, creamy ranch, and the new Wendy's signature sauce to experience a total taste bud blitz of flavor. It's time to join a team that won't upset you with an upset.
Taste the phenom that's gracing the gridiron with its juicy, crispy, and tendery tendencies. Don't fumble the bag. Commit to Team Tendies and call the most delicious plays in the playbook.
All right, huddle up, guys. Tendies on 3. Tendies on 3. 1, 2, 3, Tendies! Let's do this. Wendy's Chicken Tendies, now at participating U.S. Wendy's.
Mike, I can't watch it. I can't watch this clip of Notre Dame finding out they were not in the 12-team playoff. I know I've seen it all over social media. It's in the new season of Here Come the Irish. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to describe it to me so it can seem like I watched it, but I don't have to actually witness the pain in the players' eyes and Marcus Freeman's eyes, because I have been avoiding this on social media all week. But you did it. You watched it. So tell us what we are missing.
Can I tell you, like, again, since we shared the same brain, I couldn't watch it till this morning. I did the same thing. I was like, I don't want to experience this all over again.
I can't do it.
But watch it hit the people most directly affected by it. And it's as bad as you think because, well, like, you know, when, like, silence as the response to me is the deepest form of hurt. Like, when there's nothing that you can say and the whole room being dead silent. Marcus Freeman, and like everyone had seen the quote that Marcus had given about, guys, usually when I stand up here, I have an answer for you of if we'd have done this, then this would have happened. Marcus looked genuinely bewildered in a way that's like, all right, if it even got him, everyone was truly caught off guard by this. So that clip, as devastating as you'd expect, and maybe more. What I can offer you, maybe as a bit of a salve to that, was the other clip I saw that was kind of, you know, affirming might be the wrong word, but like a reminder. Yeah, maybe we'll go with uplifting, because obviously, like, Notre Dame's been the butt of a lot of jokes through playoff season because of, you know, not making it to the college football playoff and the fan response to that, opting out of the bowl game and the larger response from college football media and everyone else to that. But this is kind of a good reminder of where this is all centered, because we remember during that time period, everyone was like, well, you know, what about what the older players want? And then when people told them what the older players wanted, they're like, oh, they're just being used as a meat shield by the administration. And people just kind of kept moving the goalposts on that because they wanted to be mad at Notre Dame for something. And Marcus Freeman, they showed the behind the scenes of a meeting that he had with the captains kind of after everything had happened, just reiterating how proud he was of them and kind of spelling out like these guys had gone and talked to other players on the team, talked to about this amongst themselves before Marcus Freeman and the staff had ever approached them about what was going on here. And I thought the most important statement from Marcus Freeman in terms of the way this response had been positioned by the rest of the college football at large of Notre Dame taking their ball and going home was, Marcus said, he's like, you guys came to me with well thought out reasons as to why this wasn't the right decision for this team this year. And he said, if this had been you guys responding emotionally and saying, we're mad and we don't want to do this, Marcus said, I wouldn't have let you guys. I would not have let you guys make that decision for that reason. But the maturity of why you did it is why I'm proud of you as captains. You're an example of what I will talk to future captains about what's expected of this job. And this is why we do all the, meetings with you guys in front of the team every week throughout the season. So I thought that would at least make you and maybe Notre Dame fans feel a bit better.
Oh, that alone, I may cry. It's impressive that there was silence. I will say, I watched the selection show with my Notre Dame alumni parents. Not silence. The reaction was X-rated in our house on Thanksgiving weekend. Did they extrapolate what any of the reasons were that the captains gave, Marcus, or was that kind of left off screen?
They gave a little bit of to that, I think, and it was, again, none of it was things we hadn't heard reported publicly about how, based on the players that wouldn't be available, this wouldn't be representative of this year's team. Like it was all that stuff, but it was kind of hearing it from Marcus, I think they did one of the like down the line vignettes from one of the players that kind of expressed that too. So I just think hearing it from them kind of reaffirms that this was not a decision solely based off hurt feelings, and this was a decision that the players had agency in, which I think were some of the big key talking points around a lot of this discussion.
Which we kind of like took their word for. I didn't think that was some made up excuse, but I'm glad that it's at least proven true. Once again, Mike and I are correct about something. Just kidding. But no, I'm glad you would describe that to all of the people listening to this that are not going to tune into that, because it is something that they're not emotionally and mentally equipped to experience watching.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say, and maybe the launching point into the next part of this discussion, is when Marcus did kind of catch himself, the one thing he went back to was kind of the refrain that we had heard from Jeremiah Love going into this season in the Players Tribune article he wrote, which Marcus said, keep the pain. Like, remember all that. So you've got a Notre Dame core of players that now have 2 years of scorn to weaponize this offseason with the new guys. So if we weren't already, all chips onto 2026, baby. Add that fuel to the fire, which, Jess, I guess then leads us to the next portion of this, which is really interesting in terms of the Notre Dame response to things. We now have a national championship game set featuring the Miami team that beat Notre Dame all the way back in week 1 of the season and was a big part of the conversation around them getting into the playoffs.
People back, Mike, we were so young. We had like 3 episodes of this podcast had been recorded at that point. We were just children, but yes. And Indiana, who Notre Dame is the last team to defeat Indiana in the history of this past year. So crazy. But yeah, we've got Indiana and Miami. How do we feel about that?
Well, I was going to ask you, because I feel like you have a pretty good idea of like some of the thoughts and feelings of the Notre Dame fan base, especially the young and online version of this, of how people feel in the Notre Dame fan base about who they look at in this matchup and see as the less, the side that they're more comfortable with winning, or God forbid who they even root for. Like, we know with Miami, there are some strong feelings with Miami and the ACC based on how things went this year. But how do Notre Dame people feel about Indiana? I guess is a question I have not explored a ton with the people in my life, because we've never had reasons to have strong feelings before.
Yeah, they've never really been a team that Notre Dame's played in our lifetimes, Mike. Even though they are, an in-state Big Ten team, but Notre Dame historically has played Purdue like 1,000 times more than they played Indiana, at least in the last 50 years. So I don't know. I think I might be alone in this, or maybe the minority, but I don't have that strong of an opinion about Indiana. And I think a lot of Notre Dame fans that maybe are based around Indianapolis or live in the state of Indiana do have stronger opinions about it. They feel like, this is how did they pull this off in 2 years? Basically, like, they're crushing teams, and like Notre Dame still hasn't won a national championship in this century. But to me, like, they're just not a team that I have any sort of like strong feelings about. So I don't know. I mean, I think I am in the minority there. I think that Indiana going from like the losingest program in college football to on the precipice of a national championship is kind of interesting. It's kind of cool. I know it's causing psychological damage to 99% of the Big Ten. Like, if you're in the Big Ten, like, I totally get it. That's a team that has been like, even more so than Rutgers, like, they're like the butt of every joke for so long. And now like Penn State fans I've seen are freaking out about it. Nebraska fans, like, they're like, come on, are you serious? Like, Indiana's going to play in the championship before us in this playoff era. But I don't know. I think maybe I would feel differently if Notre Dame had not gone on the run they went on last year. Maybe I'd feel differently if Notre Dame was like operating in a really unserious fashion when it came to football, like I think they were for a lot of my childhood. But having a team that's really good and a head coach that, you know, has done a pretty good job, I guess, like, it could be any team that Notre Dame doesn't play, and I'd feel the same way. The fact that it's Indiana doesn't really, like, elicit a strong response from me. But again, I think I'm alone on that one, Mike.
I agree with you. Like, I don't have a strong negative reaction to Indiana. Maybe, like, I associate them with, you know, home field. And I think the story is, like, you know, fun on the surface. It's someone new added to the mix. I think your point about not feeling anything around this as the world of college football continues to change and alienate the rivalries and geographical ties that do make strong feelings that have made this sport go, something to think about and hold on to and maybe apply to different places in a way that's not necessarily good for the sport. I'm not saying Indiana being good is not good for the sport, but I'm just pointing it out that, like, when you have a bunch of teams now, they're going to be playing other teams a lot going forward with no history whatsoever and no real strong feelings. That's not what college football is about. But no, to me, the last 3 years, and so many people in SEC country are freaking out because it's the first 3-year stretch and God knows how long.
That is pretty funny to me. And, like, I have to admit, like, that is a pro Indiana, a notch in the pro Indiana bucket for me, that, like, Alabama fans and Georgia fans and, like, all these SEC fans are like, what the we let Indiana into the national championship game and we haven't played in it in 3 years. But yes, go on.
No, it's just like this whole era of college football has just reinforced to me that, like, to win a national championship has become something much more, to me, realistic for Notre Dame in my lifetime than I thought it a decade ago, when the sport looked so different, the resource allocation was so different. And now, and to your point, maybe that is recency bias because we watched them do it last year. And now, you know, Notre Dame gets to watch other programs field questions about their performance in big games. See Oregon and Dan Lanning, who have gotten a ton of that. Like, you know, I don't even wait near those discussions because I'm like, oh, I lived this. Y'all have fun with that.
Right.
I'm going to coast off those Penn State, Georgia, and Indiana wins from last year for a good long time and feel good about that. But it does still make it feel like, formulaically looking at the things that go into it, what worked for Indiana? They prioritize the lines of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. They have an excellent coach and are the best coach team in the playoff right now and probably in college football. And they hit on quarterback. And so I look at all of those as things, with, like, especially selfishly viewing it through the lens of Notre Dame's current roster and what's capable there. You go, all right, there's a lot of those same things that you feel are there already. And so if you can go do that, looking at the way the rest of the sport has kind of evened out the talent, you feel pretty good about the opportunity of your team to be able to go and do that. And in this case, your team for us is Notre Dame.
Yeah. And Indiana's so good, Mike. People are coming up with these cheating allegations about them. Would love that to be Notre Dame, by the way. Would love to be just beating the crap out of so many teams that people are like, all right, someone hacked into the mainframe. They've got all the practice squad footage. Like, I don't want to say this is, like, the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, because, like, there was a sign stealing scandal 2 years ago with Michigan. So we know that, like, their teams will go through great lengths to find competitive advantages that do break the rules. I'm not going to pretend like that's not something that happens, but, like, Indiana's also just a really good football team. And I don't think you could, like, these cheating like the cheating allegations that I've seen on social media coming from, like, legit college football media people, by the way, not just, like, you know, random fan accounts. If it were that, I would completely discard it. But to me, it's like, if you have evidence of it, say so. And if not, you can't accuse them of cheating.
It just, man, like, cry harder. Like,
I would
what
love
are we
it to
doing
be us,
here?
though. I would love it to be us, though.
Oh, Jess, I said that coming off last year's national title, where, like, people liked Notre Dame and we're kind of rooting for them because Ohio State's been there, done. I'm like, no, I want y'all to hate us. I want to go out here and be cracking some team's skulls so hard that you're sitting there working for any possible means to discredit what we're doing. And that's what Indiana was beating Oregon so badly in that game, people were starting to have the 2019 LSU conversation about Indiana and what they're doing right now. So, yes, Lord, I have seen what you have done for others, and I want that for me too.
I want that for me. Yeah, it was kind of stunning to see. First of all, like, the sheer level of blowout that the semifinal game was, to me, was like, we can't ever have the conversation about like, I don't like blowouts in the playoffs. Don't let James Madison in anymore. When like
it's a safety issue.
It's happening in the semifinal. Like that, you presumably like those teams are as equal as you can get them. They both had to play against other playoff teams to get to that point. And Indiana still scored 56 points on them. But yeah, well, going into like the second quarter, I was like, this has TCU Georgia written all over it. And I did not see that coming at all from Oregon. I thought that they would put up at least a little bit more of a fight in that one. So now I think going into the championship game, which is after we record next week's episode, so we won't know who won when next week's episode comes out. I think Indiana, I saw, was like a 7.5 point favorite against Miami. I think it's going to be a game. Like, I know a lot of people are thinking like Indiana's going to like blow the brakes off of them because they just saw them do it against Oregon, while Miami struggled against Ole Miss, who's been, they had a little bit of magic with their offense this season, but like their defense had been kind of like iffy this season. So I think we're going to get a good game. I think it's going to be pretty fun to watch the trench battles in it, but unfortunately we won't get to talk about it next week. So stay tuned till our February episode of the Echoes, because it's already the 12th and we still don't have a championship game, and we won't know when we record next week, unfortunately.
With that in mind, Jess, one thing that I do think Notre Dame fans and college football fans also probably found interesting this week were the reports about the potential for playoff expansion. So every year around these times, and this year at the national championship will be the same, a lot of the power brokers and powers that be will get together and have further discussions. And Heather Dinich over at ESPN was the latest to report the current state of affairs, that there was growing momentum for a 16-team playoff, especially from the SEC. But now with the caveat that Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti and the Big Ten have positioned it as they will support a 16-team playoff move, provided that the SEC would then commit to, in 2 or 3 years, moving to a 24-team model, which is something the Big Ten has talked about for a while here. So, Jess, I remember you, I think, posted one of the funnier TikToks in the wake of the 24-team playoff notice the first time around. Hearing it substantiated even more at this juncture here, how does that make you feel?
My gut reaction is no, don't do this. Like, you can convince me 16 is fine. I actually think 16 would be great for Notre Dame, because I think like a 10-2 Notre Dame team with a decent strength of schedule is like going to get into that playoff bracket. Like, I think that would be solid. I think Pete Bavacqua wants that. And I can see an argument for it, because like right now you have a 10 seed playing for the championship. I don't think it's insane to say like there's 16 teams if you do like the, top 5 conference champions and then 11 at-large bids. But like that seems to make sense to me in a way that like 24 teams does not. The 24 team playoff that FBS would do would not be comparable to the one that FCS schools do. And I know that that's been like I think a lot of fans have been like, well, like the FCS has had this 24 team bracket for a long time and it works for them. Why wouldn't it work for FBS? For one, like the schedules would need to change, like the calendar would need to change. We have to do something with conference championship games. It wouldn't be like every conference gets an automatic qualifier. This would be like the, SEC Big Ten Invitational that we know Tony Petitti's been angling for a long time, with a few at-large bids here and there. So without knowing like what the automatic qualifiers would be, like my gut reaction is just, if you do like a 24-team straight seeding playoff bracket, like I don't like it. I think it's too many games. I think given how we already have a championship game bleeding into the end of January, I don't have a lot of faith that they would fix that. I don't have a lot of faith that this would lead to more on-campus games. Maybe it would. Maybe like the first 2 rounds would be on campus, but like I don't have a ton of faith in it working out in a way that would be good for fans. So, and I also don't like the fact that the Big Ten commissioner now is like the guy in charge of everything. Like what the hell? When did this happen? Like, he's like the chief villain in all of this, who's trying to just like leverage this into working out the way that he wants, so more of his conference's teams can get in. So my gut reaction is, Mike, I do not like 24 teams, but you could convince me that 16 is fine.
Well, and I still wonder if that's kind of how they continue to wrap this. Because remember, there was a point in time where the move to 16 was something that people thought was too much. And so you continue to wonder if throwing out 24 as an easy public negotiation tactic to make 16 seem more palatable in comparison, as if that's the binary that we're working with here in all of this, and not everything being on the table. Because the other part of this is, if they don't agree, then we just stay at 12. Which is fine. Like you said, for Notre Dame, the most advantageous would probably be 16. if they move to 16, that MOU that was widely discussed over the last year or so does go away. That only applies to the 12 or 14 playoff.
The last month or so, because a year or so ago, no one knew it existed.
Yeah. No, it was a completely secret document that was passed down in the shadows by all the illegal power brokers from Notre Dame and college football. But just my biggest beef with all this always is sports are at their best, and the reason football has always had a chief place among them, college or pro, is it is a weekly ritual that has the advantage of scarcity with its product over a lot of the other sports.
Yes.
And you are forfeiting both of those in a lot of ways. Maybe not, again, the weekly nature of it obviously isn't going to change, but you're adding more to it. And listen, I understand the devaluing of the regular season. That's a beauty's in the eye of the beholder thing. Plenty of games still mattered this year. Plenty of rivalry games, even if they didn't have direct playoff implications, certainly still had the weight of years of those teams and fan bases hitting each other. But like we said, we're eroding that ground we walk on every single day with the larger decisions made in the sport. But to continue to have a postseason model that just is like, yeah, every few years we're going to mix the bag and change it. Like that's not good for the people that watch this sport. It's not good for anybody. It does not serve the fans to every few years have a postseason model that changes how we pick those teams, what the criteria is, how many we're going to let in, what the structure and format's going to look like. We've already had some of the conversation, like there's the growing buzz about the prices of the tickets for the national championship games now, but the cost for fans to try and ride this wave with their team every year and the amount of games you'd potentially, like none of it serves the fan in any real way to continue to shake the bag up every couple of years. And that's the thing I hate the most.
Right. And the flip side of that is that tickets to the New Year's Six games, a lot of them were incredibly cheap the last couple of weeks because if you are a fan, you have to make decisions, and those games were just not in high of demand as you would expect for playoff games. And it makes a lot of sense why. I'm not saying that they should be expensive either. I think generally tickets should be affordable to watch college football games, but that's more of a a big picture problem. But Mike, I put in a little bracket what the 2014 playoff would look like for this season, where just to see like who would Notre Dame even play against if there was a 2014 playoff this year. So here's your first round games if you want to hear. And in this format, I'm assuming like the top 8 teams get bye weeks. And so like you're playing in against, the Indiana, Oklahoma, Oregons of the world. But we'd have Arizona versus USC in the first round. So already any playoff that's allowing USC in, not a good format. I'll just say that right there. We have JMU and Alabama. And again, assuming it's 1 through 24 and like Duke doesn't somehow jump JMU because they're a power conference, because we don't know, like this article that Heather Dinich wrote said that there could be automatic qualifiers or there could be none. Who the hell knows? So I just did like 1 through 24. So JMU versus Alabama in the first round. I'll take JMU in that game this year. Houston, BYU, Tulane, Texas, Virginia versus Vanderbilt. Notre Dame would play Georgia Tech. Notre Dame as the 11 seed would play Georgia Tech. Iowa versus Miami, and Michigan versus Utah, the Kyle Whittingham Bowl. So if Notre Dame beat Georgia Tech in this bracket, they would play against the 8 seed, which is Ole Miss. And then the winner of that game in the second round would go on to the quarterfinals and play either Texas A&M, Iowa, Miami, Michigan, Utah, or Ohio State. So they would be in like that chunk of the bracket before you even get to the semifinals. So yeah, it's a lot more games. I think the issue that always comes up in the NFL with bargaining and with the CBA is always the number of games, Mike. And the players have, their stance on it, which is if they don't want to play more games, like that's a huge, huge point of contention in the NFL. The NFL wants more games because they get more revenue. And in college, since the players have no say in this, you have a system where like we could just plop like 7 games on the end of your schedule after you played a 12-game regular season. And like they have no say in that. So from that standpoint alone, I really don't love it. And the thing about all of those games that I just mentioned, like those would all just be great regular season games. Like they don't have to be playoff games. Like we can have in a just world, we can have 8-game conference schedules, and then you are mandated to play 2 power opponents every year. And we can see Virginia and Vanderbilt play each other in the regular season. I know Vanderbilt had actually scheduled Virginia Tech this year. So, but like, I don't know. It feels like we get a lot more rematches. We get a lot more games, and I don't know if we need them. And so I'm not sold on it, and I don't really like it.
It's just funny because, like, we're just robbing Peter to pay Paul. Like, we used to have a regular season where you'd have to try and do this in the name of going out and getting to the right bowl and getting the right poll to give you a national championship. And now we've got coaches trying to make sure they push all the hard games off their schedule, ride through conference play, to then have to play the same teams that you would maybe have played out of conference in an earlier version of this sport. Like, we're just kind of mixing up the food on our plate and telling our parents that we ate our vegetables in a way that, just ultimately is probably designed to produce more television dollars at this time of year and focus on the playoff that everyone's become enamored with. Like, I don't know. It's a really interesting time to be a college football fan. Like, the player side of it you mentioned, Jess, I've beat that drum for years that, like, they have no say in representation in this. That's going to be a lot harder to sell to the general public now because most people are already like, these guys are getting paid. We see all the money, dollar amounts now. And the minute people know your salary, any empathy for your situation goes out the window, and it just becomes, well, you're likely paid more than I am to do a job that I would like to do. And so I'm not going to feel sympathy for you having to do more of it, even though we ignore the fact that, like, in the NFL, when those guys get done with the season that they did collectively bargain for, they can take time off. They can go be away from the facility until April when the teams come back here. If you're a player in college, it's right back to being under the thumb of the people that you were just coached by during the course of that season, and you've got to go to class.
You're sitting in Portuguese with Keon Keeley on Monday morning. Anyways, yes. Mike, I'm with you. We'll probably talk more about this. I think we'll hopefully get an update. There was an extension on, like, when this needed to be decided by. So I think we'll know by the end of the month, like, what, if we're just going to stick at 12 for now, or if it is going to expand. But something to pay attention to if you care at all about what the postseason looks like going down the line. And again, 16 or 24 teams, probably good for Notre Dame. But yeah, I am less certain that it's great for the general sport of college football. When we get back from the break, we have more. We're going to talk about the women's basketball team getting back on track. So yeah, stick around. We'll be back. And the Notre Dame women's basketball team winning against a ranked North Carolina team at home on Sunday. Mike, they were hosting all of the 2001 national championship winning players from Neil Ivy's team. A bunch of all the heavy hitters were back on campus. Ruth Riley Hunter, Muffet McGraw, a bunch of players from the 2001 team that beat Purdue in the championship. So that was cool to see. I mean, like we talked about last week, this team had a little bit of a skid in conference against Duke and Georgia Tech, but now at least won their first of this, like, 3-game buzzsaw, I would say, that they're playing against. The next game is against Louisville, who's currently ranked number 10 in the country, best team in the ACC, I believe. And then next week is the big UConn game Monday night, which I really do not expect Notre Dame to beat UConn at Stores, but it would be nice to at least get another win under their belt in conference before then. But this was like a good first step for that. Like, this was a good back on your home court, played better defense. Carolina didn't shoot well. Hannah Hidalgo had another 31-point game, 7 steals. Cass Prosper had a double-double. Vanessa De Jesus shot really well from 3. So, like, things kind of back on track. Like, when everything's working for this team, they do play really well together. But when something goes wrong, Mike, it's not pretty. So here's to the hope that against Louisville, they are up for the task and can at least go 2 for 3 on the stretch. I think that would be huge for them right now. They're 4-2 in conference, and just they need to pick up all the conference wins they can get. Obviously, especially if your Monday game is going to be against UConn, and that's going to be. I mean, they're clearly, I think, the best team in the country right now. Have just such a stacked roster this year. So at least one good basketball result from this week. We won't talk about the other one. We'll talk about the Clemson game. But I'm really happy. I'm really happy for Neil Ivy that she got the win while her teammates and herself are being honored on Sunday.
Maybe we just keep them around. Like, that was my thought, was like, Neil was not about to get embarrassed in front of company. Like, you're not going to do me like this while all of my friends and my mentor and former coach are here. So we are going to go out here and play with an effort unknown to mankind. Like, I just feel like we got to have Muffet and Ruth Riley sitting in the bench behind Neil for the rest of this run. I love that idea. And I also loved the pictures of Muffet and her husband sitting next to CJ Carr on the baseline. What a shot. Like, so
Notre Dame star power in one shot. CJ's statue, when he wins the Heisman in the national championship, we can put it right next to Muffins. Like, they can wave to each other outside of the Purcell Pavilion in Notre Dame Stadium. I think that would be a great thing to look forward to, Mike.
Hey, man, one time, by the way, for the 01 Notre Dame Women's National Championship team, as a kid that grew up in central Connecticut, so right in the heart of UConn territory, around a bunch of UConn fans, I was a man on an island, and that national champ, like, we had the Ruth Riley poster up in my basement in the house growing up after that run, and I walked into school that next day in elementary school, fully dressed head to toe as the leprechaun, was just peacocking all over these nerds and pissing off everyone in my school. So I owe that team such a debt of gratitude. They are so special to me for that reason, because they were a lifeline at a time where I was drowning out there in Husky country.
I love that. And I love listening to Niele talk about how that championship changed her life and like the sisterhood of the players on that team after the game. Just give me all of the positive, warm and fuzzy vibes. So anyways, yeah, it was an interesting Sunday, Mike, but it seems like positive things moving forward. Perhaps, as we said a few weeks ago, we are closing one chapter, opening a new chapter, got some good football news, and now we get to ride off into 2026 on a high note.
Exactly. So we will keep our fingers crossed for more good news coming our way here in the portal as guys are back on campus. And of course, as basketball season keeps humming along, I did see some early highlights of the lacrosse team back out beginning practice here too, getting on the field, which very exciting stuff as I'm frothing in the mouth to get to that season. So make sure you stay tapped in here as we continue to remind everyone we aren't going away once football season officially ends for college football at large. We'll be here every week. So download, subscribe, rate, review. Thanks so much, and go Irish.